Um, so today I'm going to be responding to my opponent's claim, which was eating meat negatively affects our personal health. My opponent's secondary claims were, first, eating meat increases the chance of getting heart disease. Second, eating meat causes high cholesterol. And third, eating red meat causes inflammation, which causes tumors. First, let me say that I believe the first and secondary claims fall under the same idea, so I don't think it should be stated separately. But my overall response to these claims is I don't find my opponent's evidence sufficient and credible enough to prove her claims. My response to the secondary claim number one, again, it was eating meat increases the chance of getting heart disease. So my opponent uses evidence, quote unquote, saying, according to American Heart Association, people who are getting heart diseases have diets high in animal products. I looked this up everywhere, and this quote is nowhere to be found on any of her citations or any websites by American Heart Association. However, though, I did find the quote on PETA's website where they were quoting American Heart Association in the same paragraph, but the quote wasn't actually, the quote that she used wasn't part of the actual quote. So, quoting PETA, says, heart disease is the #1 health problem in the United States today, and according to the American Heart Association, it is the single leading cause of death. PETA continues, most heart disease is diet-related, caused by diets high in animal products. So it's actually a PETA's quote, and I don't find PETA a credible source. I don't think I need to go into explaining why PETA is a credible source. So simply, my response was that diets high in animal products are a cause of heart diseases, such as coronary heart disease, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone who has a heart disease has a diet high in animal products. Okay, so their secondary claim number 2 was eating meat causes high cholesterol. Evidence used by my opponent states, quote unquote, high cholesterol comes from eating foods high in saturated fat and trans fats, which are commonly found in animal products. First of all, my opponent used no citation for this evidence, so I'm not sure where they got it from, but I don't doubt it was somewhere online. But trans fats are actually not naturally found in large amounts in animal products. According to American Heart Association, which is a source that my opponent also cited, there are 2 broad types of trans fats found in foods. There is naturally occurring and artificial trans fats. Naturally occurring trans fats are produced in the gut of some animals and the foods made from these animals, but they may only contain very, very small quantities of these fats. And these naturally occurring fats actually are not harmful to our health at all, except they may actually reduce the development of many different chronic diseases, which I will get into later. On the other hand, though, most trans fats are actually artificial trans fats that are created in an industrial process that adds hydrogen to liquid vegetable oils to make them more solid. According to Mayo Clinic, this partially hydrogenated oil is less likely to spoil, so foods made with this oil have a longer shelf life. The manufactured form of trans fats is found in many food products such as baked goods, cakes, cookies, pie crusts, crackers, snacks, potatoes, corn, tortilla chips, packaged popcorn, any kind of fried food like fried chicken, French fries, refrigerated dough, and like almost anything that you can find in a store. So you can actually be a vegetarian and have a higher cholesterol having a diet rich in these pastries such as the ones that I stated, or just butter and cheese, rather than, have a higher cholesterol than a meat eater. Okay. So my opponent's third secondary claim was eating red meat causes inflammation, which causes tumors. Evidence used by my opponent said more than 5% of the meat that Americans eat is highly inflammatory because it comes from grain-fed cattle. Again, there was no citation for this evidence, so I don't know where it came from. And my response was that if the problem is that we're eating grain-fed cattle, we can just simply switch to grass-fed cattle instead of switching completely to vegetarian. According to CNN, grass-fed beef is actually lower in calories, contains more healthy omega-3 fats, more vitamins A and E, higher levels of antioxidants, and up to 7 times the beta-carotene. The grass-fed cow is said to be better for the planet because less energy goes into growing grass and grain. It's said to be better for the beef eater because there's less overall fat that could cause the plaque buildup that would cause heart disease, as well as it's better for the cow because critics say that it's immoral to feed some grains. Also, author Joe Robinson points out in Pasture Perfect, which is a book about the benefits of pasteurized animals, if you eat a typical amount of beef per year, which in the United States is about 67 pounds, switching to grass-fed beef will save you 16,642 calories a year. So that's another fact. Grass-fed beef is also a great source of CLA, which is conjugated linoleic acid, a fat that reduces the risk of cancer, obesity, diabetes, and a number of immune disorders. Beef in its natural, from this we can conclude that beef in its natural grass-fed state is a health food of the highest order. So instead of completely removing meat from our diet, we can simply switch to a diet of moderate grass-fed meat and dairy, and exclude commercial foods containing hydrogenated oil in order to reduce risks of inflammation and high cholesterol to practically nothing. This way we would be replacing the intake of the bad kind of fats that could cause plaque buildup inside the coronary arteries, and by eating the good kind of fats, like omega-3. Thank you.
All right, all the structural stuff is fine. At the beginning of the speech, you lay out where we're headed on these particular points. It's interesting that even though you see 1 and 2 as being the same basic issue, you decide to go ahead and break them up and respond to them individually. That's okay, but why bother making that point then if you're going to do that anyway? I'm not sure that it gets you anything. On the first point on heart disease, I thought that you presented a kind of a realistic explanation about how this quote came from the American Heart Association via PETA, and I think that that's pretty reasonable. It's hard to disprove that the American Heart Association said this sort of thing, but you made an argument that said that there's no information that said they said it. The one place that it appears is outside, they're citing the AHA, American Heart Association, and then PETA adds in their information, and I thought that you explained that pretty well. There's also an argument that says that you can't kind of reverse the relationship that's being presented there. I thought you explained that reasonably well. On the cholesterol argument, I thought you did an excellent job talking about how the real source of the problem is not fats per se, but trans fats especially. And you challenged the lack of evidence that the advocate presented. And then you really focus on why the trans fat issue is the main problem. And the idea seems to be here at the end that the trans fats come from a lot of things that don't necessarily have anything to do with the consumption of meats. And so as a consequence, the notion that meat is responsible for these problems is, there's a cause-effect relationship here that I think you've challenged pretty effectively there. Which is also demonstrated in that third point. I'm sorry, I got a little bit of a allergy thing or something that's going on here. I'm having to catch my breath occasionally. Which is also the point that you're making on the third point, which is it's not the beef consumption, it's the fact that the beef might have been fed something different, and so it's and you've got a nice quote right at the end. It says, beef in its purest form is actually health food for you, and that sort of thing. And I thought that was really effective in dealing with that argument. It's a little long, as you said. You recognize. I know you're trying to be thorough. Probably have to make a couple of choices, but the summary of the argument, it comes down to those particular things that we just talked about here. And I think you could probably make it a little bit more effectively. When we get to the debates, you sometimes have to be brutally to the point on arguments, and your claims need to get to that issue a little bit more sharply. But it was a good job. Thank you.